The film you are about to see is a modest tribute to the 125,000 airmen who served with Bomber Command during the Second World War. But prior to the war starting, Bomber Command, unlike the German Luftwaffe, was grossly ill-equipped and in no position to be fighting any war. But by 1939, almost 21 years after the end of the First World War, Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany, had rebuilt his army, navy and air force to unprecedented proportions. He'd also mass-produced a staggering amount of arms and ammunition in readiness for total warfare. All this had culminated in a total disregard and a breach of the Peace Treaty of Versailles, which was signed at the end of the First World War, actually limiting Germany to a small army and a small amount of arms. But to Adolf Hitler, it was as if the First World War had never ended. His strategy was of great concern to not only this country, but for countries throughout the world. And when he invaded his neighbouring country, Poland, Britain, supported by France, strongly protested and issued Hitler with an ultimatum demanding that he and his troops should remove themselves from Poland immediately. Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister, waited patiently for Hitler's reply, but it never came. And as time ran out, it then became apparent that once again Britain was embroiled into a state of war with Germany. By 1940, the Battle of Britain had commenced, and the Blitz had brought death and destruction to the towns and cities of Britain. This was Hitler's way of trying to break the will of the British people into surrendering to Nazi Germany. But little did he know that the British people were made of much more sterner stuff than he thought. It wasn't long before the war had broken out in various parts of the world, and the Royal Navy and the Army were relegated into protecting British interests abroad. However, the Navy continued to pursue a defensive role in protecting the English Channel and the coast of Britain against the possibility of an invasion. Arthur Harris, who had served his time through the ranks of RAF Bomber Command and was eventually promoted to Commander-in-Chief in 1942, had voiced his concern to his Chiefs of Staff regarding the massive excess of war materials being produced by the German industries. Bombers encroached on enemy territory. The German night fight defence squadrons were alerted, and although the Lancaster crews were fully trained in taking evasive action, they were always taken by surprise. and veterans of the German Knife Fighter Squadron Association have openly expressed their admiration for the British airmen who had dared to fly bombers over Germany's heavily defended and hostile territory. The German ex-servicemen freely admit that they personally would never have changed places with the RAF airmen. By 1944, the continual bombing and devastation of Germany's war production by Bomber Command and the United States 8th Bomber Command had seriously denied the German armies of their supplies of weaponry to defend the fatherland. Also, the bombing of military concentrations in the Rhine area and Normandy prior to the D-Day landings allowed the way clear for the advancement of British troops and the Allied forces to invade successfully. Further bombing of the V-rocket sites eradicated the blitzing that London was subject to on a daily basis. But the destruction of the research and development centres, such as Peenemünde, ensured that the German scientists were unable to further develop a weapon far greater than the V2 rocket. One of the decisive factors in beating the German military and the Luftwaffe was the total destruction of oil plants, which by 1945 had conclusively brought the war to a close by starving the German war machine of fuel. When the war was over, a dispute had erupted in Whitehall that even Bomber Command would find it hard to survive. Shocked MPs and government officials were horrified to learn about the hundreds of thousands of civilian fatalities that resulted in the city-busting raids on Germany. But the War Cabinet had said that Germany must be bombed, and Churchill said,
"We will mete out to the Germans the measure, and more than the measure, they have meted out to us."
But the government was severely criticised for allowing area bombing to take place, and it was alleged that the Minister of the House, who was ultimately in charge of the bombing campaign, utterly denied when challenged of ever giving orders to bomb the German nation. Attention was then turned towards Arthur Harris, targeting him into accepting responsibility. But Harris, who was appalled by his critics' ungrateful remarks, insisted he had carried out direct orders from his superiors. And so the blame for the carpet bombing of German cities was reflected down through the ranks, from the Commander-in-Chief to the bomber crews, making them also accountable. It is ironic that over half a century later, those courageous lads of Bomber Command, who in those dark days represented the fighting spirit of Britain, and who had fought over 1,000 battles against all the odds, with only a 1 in 3 chance of survival, were to go unrecognised for their enormous contribution that they had made towards the victory of Britain.